She was just a fake date, until she stole the entire gala. The sky hung gray over London, but inside the penthouse on the 42nd floor, everything gleamed. Polished floors, marble counters, walls of glass that stretched from ceiling to floor, offering a ruthless view of the Thames like it bowed to no one, just like the man who stood before it. Nathaniel Carter, 35, CEO of Carter Global Tech, polished, sharp, unreadable. The kind of man whose silence said more than most men's speeches. He stood still, a letter in hand, sealed with a royal crest in gold. He didn't open it immediately. He knew what it was. When he finally broke the seal and read it, his jaw clenched. His fingers curled slightly at the edge of the thick cardstock. Victoria Blake, his ex. Her name was printed in bold cursive, just above a chilling line. A night to celebrate the engagement of Lady Victoria Blake and His Grace, Duke Thomas of Elmsworth. He let out a low, humorless laugh. 2 years ago, she'd walked out of his life in front of a full ballroom, called him emotionally barren and socially ill-fitted to aristocracy. Now, she was parading her new title and future crown. This woman, he muttered, dropping the invitation onto the glass table. She wants a performance. Behind him, footsteps. It was Julian, his oldest friend and business partner, always slightly disheveled, always brutally honest. She doesn't want a performance, Nate. She wants proof you're still beneath her, Julian said, dropping onto the couch. Ty asked you. You going alone would be suicide. Nathaniel said nothing. Julian leaned forward. Bring someone. I'm not parading around with a trophy date. Then bring someone who becomes the trophy. Nathaniel looked back at him. That's ridiculous. Julian shrugged. Not really. You've got money, styling teams, in 2 weeks. At that moment, the office door creaked open. Emily Monroe stepped in, balancing a coffee tray. She was quiet, careful with her steps, her hair pulled back too tightly, blouse a size too large, eyes fixed on the floor. You're flat white, sir. Nathaniel turned. Her voice was soft, pleasant. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the cup on the table. She'd only been working there 3 weeks. Polite, invisible, forgettable. Until now. He watched her leave, slowly. Not just her walk, but how she held herself, guarded, hesitant, like someone taught not to take up too much space. There was something raw, untapped, a kind of beauty hiding beneath restraint. Julian followed his gaze, then raised a brow. You thinking what I'm thinking? Nathaniel's lips barely moved. She doesn't fit. Exactly. No one would expect her. That's why it works. There was a beat of silence as the idea took root. The gala wasn't just an event. It was a declaration of legacy, power, bloodlines. A battlefield disguised in silk and champagne. And suddenly, he didn't want to show up as a footnote. He wanted to upstage history. Nathaniel turned to the window again. The city sprawled beneath him. If I'm going to bring someone, he said slowly, I'll need more than a pretty face. Julian grinned. Then you've got 2 weeks to make one. Downstairs, Emily rode the elevator back to her desk, unaware she'd just been chosen. Not for a job, not for a date, but for something far more dangerous. A role in a war she never asked to fight. And the gala? That wouldn't be the night that changed everything. This was. Emily Monroe heard her name through the intercom like a summons from a throne room. She stood from her desk, nerves spiking. No one got called to Nathaniel Carter's office unless something had gone very wrong or very, very right. Heart thudding, she stepped into the private elevator. Her reflection in the steel wall showed tension in every feature. Bitten lips, nervous eyes, fingers locked tightly together. When the doors opened, the atmosphere changed. His office was a glass fortress floating above the skyline, silent except for the ticking of an antique clock and the low hum of power. Nathaniel sat behind a sleek black desk, not looking up, just a tap of his pen against the invitation from the day before. Sit, he said. She obeyed, uncertain. You're probably wondering why you're here. I didn't spill anything, I promise, she stammered. He looked up. It's not about coffee. That didn't help. He studied her, not with contempt, but with calculation. There's an event next weekend. A gala. The Blake engagement. She'd seen the tabloids. Victoria Blake, Heir to the Blake estate, socialite, darling. And Nathaniel's ex. Emily swallowed. I see. I need a date. She blinked. Date. One night. Strictly fake. To show up, look stunning, and survive champagne and small talk. Emily froze. I think you've got the wrong person. I don't think I do, he said calmly. I need someone they won't see coming. Someone who'll make the room pause. You fit. I don't fit anything, she replied, half laughing, half panicked. He leaned back. Do you have plans that night? No, but... Then say yes. Her head spun. Just last week, she'd been ghosted by a man who told her she was too plain, too safe, too forgettable. His words still echoed in moments like this. You'll never be the kind of woman men show off. But here was Nathaniel Carter, offering her a ticket into the most watched event of the year. Still, she hesitated. Why me? He didn't blink. Because you're not the kind of woman who begs for attention. That alone makes you rare. It should have flattered her. Instead, it made her uneasy. What exactly would I be pretending to be? He smiled faintly. You won't be pretending. You'll be elevated. Emily stood. I don't want to be a joke. I've done enough of that for one lifetime. Then don't be, he said. She looked at the floor, then back at him. If I agree, I have one rule. I'm listening. No lies. No act. I go as myself. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. You'll go as who you are, but that version of you, Emily, is about to get a serious upgrade. He stood and walked to the window, voice smooth as glass. The press will notice. The women will whisper. Victoria will squirm. But only if you stop shrinking. Emily breathed in deeply. This wasn't a date. It was a deal with the devil. But for the first time, she wasn't being overlooked. She was being chosen. I'll do it, she said softly. The next morning, her apartment doorbell rang. On her doorstep stood a stylist with garment bags, a poised woman with a notepad labeled Etiquette Intensive, and a makeup artist already adjusting her brush belt. Emily stood in her robe, staring at them in disbelief. She had agreed to be a +1, but what she just signed up for was a complete transformation, and the countdown had begun. Emily stood at the threshold of her own flat like a guest in someone else's life. Inside, the once quiet space buzzed with movement. Racks of couture dresses lined the hallway. The living room had been overtaken by boxes of heels, trays of cosmetics, and a polished woman directing everything like a general at war. Strip the fear. Keep the soul, the stylist had said, clapping her hands as if styling Emily were a spiritual intervention. Emily nodded mutely, still in shock. The first hour passed in a blur. Measurements, fabric draping, color theory. Before noon, her nails were buffed to a glossy nude, brows softly arched, lashes lifted. A facialist murmured words of encouragement while applying a cooling mask. You have cheekbones, she said, almost reverently. They've just been hiding. Emily didn't know how to respond. Then came the fittings. Silks whispered across her skin. Zippers slid up with reverence. The gowns were breathtaking, but she wasn't sure they were meant for her. Every time she saw her reflection, something inside hesitated. You don't see it yet, do you? The makeup artist asked as she set down her brush. See what? The part of you that's always been there, waiting. Later, she was guided through posture sessions. Balance on heels. Shoulders down. Chin lifted. Each step, each pose chipped away at something small and timid. Her instructor, a former ballet dancer, was firm but kind. You walk like you're apologizing. Let them adjust to you for once. Then came the dance. In a rented studio bathed in afternoon light, Emily faced Nathaniel for the first time since agreeing to the plan. He was already in motion, cool and unhurried, a waltz track playing through hidden speakers. He offered a hand. She hesitated. I don't know how, she murmured. Then follow, he said. They moved slowly, awkward at first, then smoother. Their hands met, eyes briefly locked. Something flickered, uncertain but undeniable. You're tense, he said softly. I'm pretending. You're improving. It wasn't flirtation, but something more dangerous. Respect building quietly. That night, alone in her bedroom, Emily stared at herself in the mirror. The reflection was cleaner, sharper, but what startled her wasn't the hair or the heels. It was the posture, the stillness in her gaze. She was learning to hold space. The next morning brought final fittings. 3 dresses had been selected, but the last one, the one in soft champagne silk, was different. It didn't scream. It whispered. The moment it slid over her skin, the room fell silent. The stylist adjusted the waist, stepped back, and gasped. Emily turned slowly toward the full-length mirror. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Elegant neckline, delicate shimmer, shoulders bare but not vulnerable, eyes steady, spine straight. She wasn't playing dress-up. She belonged in that gown. For a moment, the room around her vanished. She wasn't thinking about the gala, or Victoria, or the deal. She was thinking about every moment she'd been told she wasn't enough. Every date she'd been overlooked. Every year she'd spent hiding behind quiet politeness. Now she saw her, and so did everyone else. From the hallway, Nathaniel watched in silence, his expression unreadable, but his eyes lingered, not on the dress, but on the woman who wore it like armor and poetry at once. She hadn't just changed. She had arrived. Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks as black cars lined the circular drive of Kensington Palace. The annual Blake Gala wasn't just an event. It was a coronation for London's elite. Aristocrats, celebrities, diplomats, all arrived draped in jewels and arrogance. Every arrival fed the cameras. Every glance was a performance. Then came the car that changed everything. The matte black rolls slowed to a halt. A hush fell across the press line. Nathaniel Carter emerged first. Tailored black tux, crisp white shirt, cufflinks catching the light. He moved like a man who'd never lost control. Every camera turned, but none clicked yet. He wasn't what they were waiting for. The rear door opened. Emily Monroe stepped out. Time fractured. She didn't descend. She unfolded, graceful, effortless, otherworldly. Her gown caught the wind, shimmering like liquid gold. Hair swept into a timeless updo. Neck bare, collarbones glinting under the chandeliers. Not a single accessory, yet she outshone diamonds. The cameras erupted. Not in flurries, in frenzy. The name on every photographer's lips wasn't Victoria. It was "Who is she?" Nathaniel offered his arm. Emily took it without hesitation. She didn't look unsure. She didn't scan for approval. She simply walked forward, into the mouth of society's most venomous stage, with a softness that disarmed and a presence that silenced. Inside the palace, chandeliers shimmered, music floated, and egos inflated under the weight of old money. Victoria Blake stood at the top of the staircase, wrapped in silk, framed by her fiancé, the Duke of Elmsworth. Her smile was poised until she saw them. Her lips thinned, her glass tilted. Nathaniel met her gaze across the room, not with malice, but a glint of quiet victory. Emily, however, didn't flinch. She was no longer the assistant, no longer the afterthought, no longer the woman people looked past. She didn't perform royalty. She became it. Whispers slithered through the crowd. Who styled her? Is she French? She's not wearing a single designer piece I recognize. She looks like a secret. Emily didn't hear them. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke volumes. Each step she took told a different story, one of quiet power, of someone who had learned not to shrink. She didn't wave. She didn't pose. She didn't adjust a thing. She simply was. And that unnerved people more than any tiara ever could. Nathaniel guided her through conversations with old colleagues and rivals. He introduced her with a calm smirk, letting curiosity swell without explanation. When asked where she was from, Emily smiled gently. Nowhere impressive. They all laughed, but it was the kind of laughter that lingered a beat too long, because none of them knew how to place her. That made her dangerous. Every other woman in the room had been bred, trained, and polished to shine under the chandeliers. Emily wasn't raised for this world. She was rewriting its rules in real time. At one point, Victoria approached, slow, deliberate, heels echoing on the marble. Her fiancé followed, trying to mask his interest as his eyes drifted toward Emily. They locked eyes. Emily didn't smile. She didn't retreat. Victoria blinked first. In that moment, everyone saw it. This wasn't a rivalry. It was a handover. The gala hadn't crowned Victoria's reign. It had ended it. And Emily, without trying, without asking, had become the woman they couldn't stop watching. The cameras never lied. That night, they told a new story, and Emily Monroe was its headline. The chatter in the East Wing slowed to a murmur as champagne flutes clinked under crystal lighting. Away from the main ballroom, the cocktail lounge offered privacy, the kind only used for whispers and strategy. Emily stood near the grand piano, fingers lightly brushing its polished edge. Her calm had not cracked once since entering the palace. But here, where the eyes were fewer and the stakes higher, she was fully alert. Nathaniel was speaking with an Italian ambassador when he caught the movement out of the corner of his eye. Victoria Blake. She approached with poise sharpened by pedigree. Draped in emerald satin, her chin slightly raised, she looked every bit the woman who had once ended a relationship like signing off a contract. Emily turned slowly. Their eyes met. The air shifted. Quite the entrance, Victoria said, lifting her glass. Good evening, Emily replied evenly. Victoria offered a smile far too tight to be warm. I must say, I didn't expect Nathaniel to arrive with someone so unfamiliar. Nathaniel, now beside Emily, didn't speak. He watched. Emily's reply was cool. That's the point, isn't it? Victoria's eyes flickered. Where are you from, dear? Emily paused, just enough to stir anticipation. Then, nowhere remarkable. Victoria stepped closer, voice sweet and acidic. So you're not one of us. The words hung like perfume. Light, poisonous, meant to linger. Emily didn't flinch. No, I'm not. But I wasn't trying to be. That earned a few raised brows from nearby guests. People were listening now, cocktail conversations fading as curiosity pulled focus. Victoria pressed. And yet, here you are, in our world. Emily took a slow sip from her glass, then met her gaze squarely. I'm not from here, but tonight I'm not trying to prove I belong. A beat. I just do. Silence followed. Not discomfort. Respect. A senior member of the royal family, a white-haired duchess with ice-blue eyes and a reputation for brutal candor, stepped closer. Well said, she murmured. That sort of presence can't be taught. It's either born or earned. And you, young lady, wear it with grace. Victoria paled. Her smile faded. The power she'd entered with had fractured. Emily nodded humbly, then turned her attention to the Duchess, completely unshaken. Thank you. I've spent a long time trying to make myself smaller. It doesn't work anymore. From across the room, murmurs spread like wildfire. Who is she? Where did she come from? But more pressing, how did she hold herself like that? Nathaniel stood still, watching the scene unfold. For weeks, he planned the optics, controlled the story, designed the image. But none of this had been rehearsed. Emily wasn't acting. She was rising, not by charm, not by flirtation, by sheer command of self. She had been brought to the gala as a statement, but now she was leading the conversation. The power had shifted, and he wasn't driving it anymore. And strangely, he didn't want to. Victoria gave one last glance, masking fury beneath dignity, then turned and walked away. Her heels clicked with forced elegance. Emily exhaled, slow and measured. She hadn't just survived the moment. She'd owned it. Nathaniel stepped beside her. That wasn't what I expected. She looked ahead. Neither was this night. They said nothing else. But the hierarchy had changed. And in that glittering room of bloodlines and billionaires, it was no longer about who had money, titles, or history. It was about her. Emily Monroe had entered as an outsider. Now, the room moved around her orbit, and the gala hadn't even reached its climax. The ballroom had quieted, its earlier frenzy softened into background music and low conversation. Crystal glasses clinked less. Laughter lost its edge. The night, though far from over, had begun to settle into memory. Emily stood near the gallery hallway, away from the crowd. The marble floor beneath her heels gleamed under dim lights. A string quartet played in the distance, slow and mournful. She breathed it all in, the grandeur, the stillness, the strange calm blooming inside her. A voice came from behind. You carry yourself like someone who knows music. She turned. The man before her was tall, silver-haired, dressed in midnight blue velvet. His presence commanded respect, not by title, but by aura. "I'm sorry," she asked politely. "I watched you tonight," he said. "You don't chase the room. You move like someone trained in rhythm. Precision. Stillness. That doesn't come from charm school." Emily offered a faint smile. "Old habits." He stepped closer. "I knew your mother." That stopped her. "She was Elena Monroe," he said. "One of the finest pianists of her time. I hosted her at the Winter Rose Gala in 1993. She made the hall cry." Emily's breath caught. For a moment, everything else blurred. "I didn't know anyone here would remember her," she whispered. "She was unforgettable. And so it seems are you." Emily looked down. "She left that life to raise me. Never chased the spotlight again." He nodded. "That kind of sacrifice leaves echoes." She gave a quiet nod of thanks, unsure how to hold the weight of what he'd just said. As he disappeared back into the crowd, Nathaniel appeared at her side. He hadn't heard the words, but he'd seen the moment. His voice was gentle, unusually so. "You okay?" Emily didn't turn. "He knew my mother." "Who was she?" She hesitated, then met his gaze. "Elena Monroe. She gave up fame to be a mother. Taught me everything quietly. Never wanted me to chase lights. I've spent my whole life trying to honor that. To stay small." Nathaniel stared at her, stunned into silence. She continued, softer now. "Tonight feels like betrayal, but also release. Like I finally stepped out of her shadow. Not to forget her, but to become something she would have clapped for." He said nothing at first. His eyes traced her face, not the gown, not the hair, not the performance. Her. No calculation. No strategy. Just her. "I brought you here to make a point," he admitted. "But you became the point." His voice lacked its usual sharpness. There was on it now. And something else. Something unspoken and fragile. Admiration. She turned away, heart thudding. "You don't need to say anything." "But I want to." Silence. Then, "You're not what I expected. You're more than anyone here understands." She looked at him. "You included?" His lips curled. "Especially me." For the first time that night, the space between them wasn't just about appearance or arrangement. It was intimate, uncertain but real. Emily had walked in as a decoy, an accessory. Now she stood as a revelation. She hadn't just stunned the room. She had disrupted Nathaniel's carefully curated world. And in doing so, she'd become the one thing he couldn't control. The camera, had this been a film, would linger on him now. His expression softened, the old armor cracked. The man who thought he had the upper hand was now quietly watching a woman rewrite every rule. Not with power, but with presence. And the night wasn't over yet. The final notes of the quartet faded into the marble. Kensington Palace, once filled with performance and posture, now quieted into farewells. Crystal glasses were emptied. Laughter turned into low murmurs. Staff moved like shadows, clearing the remnants of a night that had already begun etching itself into gossip columns. Emily Monroe stepped through the gilded doors alone. No cameras this time. No flashbulbs. Just the hush of midnight settling across the stone steps. Her heels clicked softly as she descended, not rushed, not hesitant. Her posture held nothing theatrical. She wasn't posing. She was at peace. Not with the gala. Not with the stares or the headlines she knew would come. But with herself. She had entered uncertain, dressed in borrowed glamour. Now, she wore conviction. Behind her, Nathaniel followed. Slower, as if recalibrating to a rhythm no longer his. He caught up to her just as she reached the edge of the circular driveway, where their car idled in wait. "Do you miss it?" he asked. She turned slightly. "Miss what?" "Being invisible." Her lips parted, then curved into something soft, wiser than amusement, lighter than pride. "No," she said. "I think I'm just getting started." No fanfare followed. Just that line, left in the air like a promise. He didn't respond right away. He didn't need to. His silence said more than his earlier smirks ever had. She walked toward the car. Heads turned. Whispers trailed behind. Not about the Duke, not about Victoria, not even about the CEO who had once commanded every room he entered. They were whispering her name. Who is she? Where did she come from? Did you see the way she stood there, like she belonged before anyone gave her permission? Nathaniel opened the door for her. She didn't hesitate. She entered, elegant even in exit. He followed, closing the space between them not with touch, but with stillness. The car pulled away. Inside, the quiet stretched, but it was warm now, not awkward. Something had shifted. He studied her reflection in the window, not as a puzzle to solve, but a story he hadn't expected to care about. She didn't ask what he was thinking. He didn't ask what she was feeling. It wasn't the end of the night that mattered anymore. It was what had begun. A woman had reclaimed her space. A man had lost his armor, and neither was quite the same. As the palace faded behind them, so did the performance. The characters they played for the world were slipping off, layer by layer. All that remained was clarity. Emily wasn't an accessory to a plan. She was the revelation that plans can be outgrown. She hadn't needed Nathaniel's name, his wealth, or his circle. She had needed a mirror, and in the oddest twist, he had become that. The camera, if there were one, would have panned out slowly, watching them from above as the city lights shimmered beneath the dark sky. No kiss, no dramatic swell of music. Just two people, changed by a night meant to prove something shallow, but which delivered something honest instead. As the scene fades, only one question remains. Was this the final act of a performance, or the opening line of something real? If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Emily's powerful transformation? Did Nathaniel surprise you? And how did you feel about Victoria's reaction when the spotlight shifted? Was this truly the end, or just the beginning of something deeper? Your opinion matters, and I'd love to hear it. Stick around, because stories like Emily and Nathaniel's are only the beginning of what's coming next.